And we're back for another Gab with Abigail. If you aren't back and this is your first time on my channel, hi, welcome to Gabs with Abigail, where we talk about the Bates and Duggars and other D-list fundies. Today we're continuing our series, Growing Up Duggar, with Chapter 5, Your Relationship with Guys. This is going to have to be split into two parts because this is a long-ass chapter. So let's get into it. Your relationship with guys, saving yourself for the one God has for you. Let no man despise thy youth, but be thou an example of the believers. In word, in conversation, in charity, in spirit, in faith, in purity. 1 Timothy 4, verse 12. Our parents have always said marriage is the most special gift from God next to salvation. Even after the many exciting years and struggles of raising 19 kids and counting, they are still deeply in love and committed to each other. They made a lifelong vow to God to stick together until death do us part. When Mom and Dad were married on July 21st, 1984, they were both really young. Mom was 17 and Dad was 19. Their marriage from the beginning was focused on sharing God's love with others. Mom and Dad have said there are two main keys to maintaining a strong marriage. 1, being willing to say I was wrong. 2, and asking, will you please forgive me? They have also committed to never going to bed angry, but to make things right the day an offense happens. We have seen the blessings of a God-centered marriage through our parents' example, and all of us do desire to one day marry. But simply getting married quickly just to be married isn't a goal for us. We want to wait for the one God has created for us and get married in His timing. Our family gets a lot of letters and emails with questions about our family's beliefs and practices related to marriage, or more accurately, to the process we prefer to follow leading up to marriage. We call it courtship, or dating with a purpose, and that's something we will discuss in this chapter. Fulfilling the craving to be loved. About the time we entered our teenage years, Dad told us a story about a girl he went to school with in elementary and high school who was boy crazy. He said she would have a boyfriend for a week or so, and then something would happen and she would get upset and break it off with him. Then a few days later, she would have a new boyfriend, and then she would switch to another, and then another. Dad said this cycle went on for years. No, our dad was never one of her many boyfriends. Oh, we know that, Jim Bob. Somebody pull up the photos. You didn't have the game. You didn't have the clout like that, Daddy. Like, let's be serious. He said he wondered at that early age if eventually this girl would find Mr. Right, or if her habit of throwing herself into relationship after relationship would prove to be preparation for a future unstable marriage. Sadly enough, when this girl finally got married, it didn't last long. And the same pattern of discontent, insecurity, and self-centeredness that had affected her dating also affected her marriage. How well did he know this bitch? I'm sorry. Like, you know all this about her because you went to elementary and junior high with her? I guess. Like, you know this intimately about all of her relationships? That's insane to me. Y'all are good friends like that? That's interesting to me. We have met some girls who have simply fallen in love with the idea of marriage and are just looking for a guy to fulfill their dreams. Have they met me? No. I'm sorry. I really need this chapter. When I tell you my love life is a show right now, I just make really poor decisions. And so I need advice on how to tell men no and stick to my convictions. I'm ready for this. One girl told us recently, I was in love with the thought of being in love, and it consumed my every waking hour. I promise you, this is me. This is Abigail. They spoke to me clearly. I must have sent them an email. I just find, like, with my relationships in general, I fall so in love with the idea of, like, getting to be in love with that person and what it would be like. And, like, just the imagination and the fantasy really will carry me really far to the point where it's like, I make a stupid, poor decision where this is a red flag, but I'm going to ignore it because of all the other things that I want to be really good green flags, you know? And it's like basic shit where it's like, you're a great person, you're a good guy, but we're not compatible. Or like, it's just not working out or something like that. Or like, you know, like I had sex with you too early and now I'm too nervous to act like myself around you. But continuing. This was one of the greatest dangers of romance novels. They paint a picture of an unrealistic, unobtainable relationship. It's the same thing pornography does to men. Viewing pornography gives them a distorted view of women that leads them down the path of immorality and guilt. Well, I just want to add that also girls look at pornography, and that also gives you an unrealistic, distorted view of women, like of yourself, and the kind of sexual performance that men want out of you. But at the same time, I do think that sex isn't something you just wake up being good at. It's something you have to learn and is taught. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Perhaps the biggest problem with pornography is that it never satisfies and instead creates an unrealistic expectation of what a woman's body looks like. No women can live up to these photoshopped and airbrushed images because they are not real. Well, the videos, it's kind of interesting that we're talking about pictures, like there's not like actual like real videos. Again, though, I agree, I don't disagree that pornography sets unrealistic expectations for women. And no man addicted to pornography will ever be content with a real woman because the woman he's looking for does not exist. Men who feed their minds on pornography start looking at women as sex objects to fulfill their out-of-control desires instead of looking at women as someone to be protected, loved, and cared for. They become self-centered, and when they start a relationship, their focus is on what they can get out of it instead of what they can put into it. This mindset eventually leads to destruction of what could have been a fulfilling marriage. This is literally like my last few relationships. I agree. How horrible. No girl would want to be married to that kind of husband. And yet when a girl reads romance novels, she's doing something very similar, drawing perfectionistic, is that a word? Romantic pictures into her mind of what she thinks marriage is. Soon she's longing for this ideal marriage that she's created in her mind, and she does everything she can to get it. So many girls look to boys and marriage to give them what only God can give: satisfaction, security, happiness, fulfillment, and lasting significance. So then I just don't get, like, what is the point of entering into a marriage if you're not going to get these things out of it? Don't you deserve to be satisfied, feel security, happiness, fulfillment, and like we're in it till the wheels fall off, till the casket drops? I'll meet you in this life and the next. Is that romance? Is that overly like romance? Like, I don't understand. If you want a fulfilling marriage, shouldn't it include those things? Shouldn't it be more than just this commitment and this covenant? Like, I just don't understand that. I guess they're going to explain. Because just reading this, I'm thinking about Anna, right? And just how so much of her marriage is an example of this, that it doesn't really matter what Josh does because you've entered this commitment before God. And so at the end of the day, if your marriage is going wrong, if there are things that are bad that are happening, it doesn't matter ultimately. You have to let that go because only God can give you the kind of satisfaction, security, happiness, fulfillment, and lasting significance that you want. It's just wild to me it's wild. Girls must realize that no man can ever give them these things 100% of the time. Even the best men will mess up. And if you're relying on them to be perfect, we will become bitter and disillusioned when they don't measure up. And I agree that you're not looking for that kind of perfection all of the time. Like, obviously nobody is perfect, but it's a weird way to phrase it that the only person who can really give you satisfaction, security, happiness, fulfillment, and lasting significance is God. I get it from their belief system, but I don't know. I feel like this is giving men a pass to be absolute shit, and you have to say, well, it's okay. Because men, you're not perfect all the time. Neither am I. And truly it's God. So you can be a terrible person. I don't know. It's important to understand that God created us with an inborn need to be accepted and loved. If you're a living, breathing person, you want someone to share your day, your passions, your desires, and the depths of your heart. But the truth is, marriage itself cannot make you truly happy. God put that deep need to be loved and accepted in our hearts so that He could be the one to fulfill it. I mean, that's very true. Definitely, marriage is not the only thing itself can make you truly happy. When you look to marriage for what only God can give, you make an idol out of marriage. The dictionary definition of idolatry is an extreme admiration, love, or reverence for something or someone. Kind of like how y'all make idols out of like the Republican Party. and its candidates. That's interesting. The people who had Donald Trump flags, I guess that's not idolatry. Boys' marriage and love can become idols. God wants us to have a wholehearted relationship with him, delighting in his word and all that he has to teach us. When we understand that he is trustworthy and faithful and that he alone knows our every need, then we know where to look for deep love and full acceptance. When we have this kind of close, loving relationship with our Creator, we can experience a joy and fulfillment that would be completely missed if our lives were consumed merely with finding our Prince Charming. This also means that someday, when we do meet the man God intends as our husband, we'll already be fulfilled, and any love that future husband gives us is a bonus over what we're already receiving from our relationship with the Lord. As teenagers and young adults, we need to cherish these single years when we are able to put our focus on serving God and use this time to its fullest. Mom has told us older kids many times, if God gives you a full 70-year life, your time as a single person is very short compared with the time you're married. I think of Jana. Be content with every stage of life, and wherever God has you, use your time wisely and invest in things that will last for eternity. Her words remind us to use these single years wisely as a time that can be fun, exciting, and fruitful, with opportunities to teach younger girls, serve the elderly, volunteer in the community, go on mission trips, and seek out ways to bless others through ministry. These years should be devoted first and foremost to strengthening and solidifying our relationship with God and understanding who He is and who He has created us to be. Defining the purity ring. This doesn't mean we're to ignore the fact that God has created us to have a natural physical desire towards men. When these feelings arise, we thank God for making us normal. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by normal? Within a godly marriage, this kind of desire can be a wonderful blessing that bonds the husband and wife together in the way God intended. But during our single years, this physical attraction, if not carefully controlled, can also be one of the biggest sources of temptation and struggles. One way our parents have helped us to understand the principle designed to keep us pure is by giving all of us older girls purity rings. The rings were special gifts we received when the four of us were in our early teenage years, because our family didn't become aware of this relatively new practice until then. Mama selected some very special rings from her jewelry box for each of us to choose from. Jana's ring has one red sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds. Jill's is a beautiful pearl. Ginger's ring has a heart design with a small diamond. Jessa's is a beautiful, solid yellow gold band. To each of us, the ring has a fourfold purpose. First, it's a symbol of our commitment to keep ourselves physically pure as we wait for the one God intends for us to marry. Second, it symbolizes our desire to involve our parents in our decision of a life partner. Third, our ring reminds us to pray for the man God would have us marry and to guard our own heart so that one day we can share it fully with Him. Fourth, and most important, it is a reminder that God is the true fulfiller of all our desires and also a reminder to cherish our relationship with Him and live purposefully between now and the time He sees fit to bring the man into our lives. I wonder what finger they wear their purity ring on. I'm pretty sure they wear it on like their ring finger, like their marriage ring finger. And I think that that's such an interesting thing for Jana, who is now in her 30s, to be wearing that kind of ring on her finger, that most people aren't going to take it as a young girl pledging her purity, but rather as a, young adult, I don't know, say a 30-year-old woman, a grown woman, having a wedding ring on her finger, and I think that's interesting. A few years ago, about the time our younger sister Joy was turning 12, Mom and Dad prepared a special time when they could help Joy celebrate her entry into womanhood. Mama got Joy some special gifts, makeup, and other girly things, and talked with her about the changes she was going through. She told her that she wasn't a little girl anymore and that the physical and emotional changes that she was starting to have are completely normal, a part of the change from girlhood to womanhood. Then she and Dad went shopping with Joy to select her purity ring. And afterwards, they went to lunch together, and Dad explained that the purity ring symbolized her decision to keep herself pure and wait for the one God has for her. Meanwhile, they discussed how she could prepare herself during this time as a growing young lady to become the kind of woman a godly guy would desire to marry. Dad has asked us girls, what kind of girl do you think a godly guy will be attracted to? Their answer is a godly girl. That's what he and Mom are continually encouraging each of us girls to become. We know that a godly girl is not someone who has lived a perfect life, but is someone who has received God's forgiveness and is seeking to put the past behind her and choosing to live every day for Him. Some of the greatest people in the Bible were those who had made a lot of bad decisions earlier in their life, but then God got a hold of them and they completely turned over the rest of their life to following and serving Him. I think it's such an interesting thing to say because I couldn't see a single Duggar, or even, actually, I feel like the base might be a little bit more open, but I couldn't see a single Duggar son marrying a girl who wasn't a virgin, who wasn't pure. Like, I think I could see them definitely marrying somebody who had a kiss before, but I could not see any of them marrying somebody who wasn't a virgin. And so I think that's an interesting thing to say in this book. Now, did Ginger go on to marry somebody who wasn't a virgin, who had quite a few bodies on him? Yes, but at the same time, she's a girl. It's so much easier for this idea that men are these lascivious sexual beings, and therefore we should look the other way when they fall to temptation because they didn't know better. They could have been wayward. God will forgive them. But you as a woman, the standard for purity is so much more extreme. And I think it's interesting that they're pretending that it's not. But anywho, fighting temptation. Many times people, especially teenagers and young adults, confuse love with sensual desire. It might even be called lust, an urge based not on genuine love, but on feelings, emotions, and a desire for pleasure. If a girl allows herself to be consumed with sensual desires, most likely she will attract a guy with the same wrong desires. These attractions may have little to do with character or godliness. Instead, they're usually based solely on a person's looks and his or her witty or flirty personality. These relationships are based on nothing more than sensual attraction. They are usually short-lived and often result in great emotional pain and heartache. Oh my God, literally the last 3 weeks of my life. A test of lust versus true love is that lust can never wait to get, but love can always wait to give. It is important, that's a little bit of a bar. A test of lust versus true love is that lust can never wait to get, but love can always wait to give. It is important to wait for the one God has for you and to wait for His timing to bring you together. Sometimes it's easy to start dreaming, could he be the one? When first meeting a guy without knowing his character or really anything about him. And if a girl becomes jealous or angry when the guy she starts a relationship with another girl, their relationship was not genuine love. Genuine love says, I want him to marry the one God has for him, even if that means it isn't me. Oh my God, honestly, this is how I felt about my ex-boyfriend when I saw that he was dating somebody new, which was that did it make me sick to my stomach? Yes, but, and it's just because, when you have feelings for somebody, of course it's going to make you feel bad, oh, they moved on, you're not shit, there's somebody out there who's better than me. But at the same time, I've just really been the mentality that this is somebody that I really, really loved and do still love. And I really want you to find your best happiness. And that obviously isn't with me. But that the times that we had together, the memories that we shared with each other were so, the good ones were so good. The love that we felt for each other was so real that I would never... I don't want to put that bitterness in somebody else's cup that didn't work out, because I do think that you deserve to be with somebody who makes you laugh more than me, who makes you feel more loved than me, makes you feel special, makes you feel lucky, makes you feel good, makes like you feel at ease with them. I want that for you because I love you and I think you deserve that happiness. And that's true though. It wasn't real love if you don't feel that way after the relationship is over. And also though, is it okay to be bitter and upset for some time? Of course. But if your relationship didn't really end on like piss poor terms, I think that is an important reflection of that. Like the love was real if you do genuinely like seeing that other person happy. I think it's always okay for it to be uncomfortable seeing that person happy with somebody else. But if the love was real, then you'll be happy for them. You'll be rejoiceful for them because there'll be a day when you fall in love, when you meet somebody else, and that person really is a distant memory, but you can look fondly on the time that you guys had together. And that sounds cliche, but when you experience it, it's really real. If a girl gets emotionally attached to a guy and can't wait for him to pop the question, but feels she has to push him along, she should remember true love waits. If it's God's will, he will work things out in his time. When we say true love waits, we mean that couples should not act like they're married when they're not, or share physical intimacies that married couples share. Also, it's important to never consider living together until you're married, as this is clearly not God's will. If a guy is pressuring a girl to live with him or to experience things that are meant to be experienced only in marriage, that's not true love, it's lust. True love waits. Where's the Bible verse that says you can't move in with somebody? From a purity perspective, I can understand not wanting people to live together because of the temptation to do stuff. And obviously, if you're living together with somebody, you're going to be sharing a bed. And if you think that that's something that should be restricted to the intimacy of marriage, okay, understandable. But it makes sense to try and live with somebody before y'all get married. Like, how a person acts in their house, how they live, that might be something that's really incompatible to you. And that might seem shallow, but especially for y'all to be the kind of women who really can't change men. They have to be the ones that want to change. Like just knowing kind of their culture. I don't know. I get it. It works out for them. They make it work. Obviously, plenty of people. I mean, I would definitely say when I was younger, I didn't think that I would live with my partner before getting married. But kind of having experienced it, no, it's kind of, it is something I think you need to kind of like work out that dynamic. Because even then when you get married, marriage changes you guys. I don't know. You know, like, who am I to give them advice? Clearly, all of them are in marriages that are working out, and my love life is just garbage. I really think that's just low self-esteem. So that's why I'm reading the book, so I can get some. Our parents have been a huge help to us in all areas of our lives, but their counsel has been especially valuable as we sort through the issues relating to becoming a woman and as accountability partners when we are having struggles or going through a challenging time. It's important that we seek counsel from our parents or another trusted adult because we know they love us and want only what is best for our lives. If one of us Duggars is struggling with any kind of temptation, we share it with our parents. Mom will wisely ask us, "Who do you think put that thought into your head?" We know the answer is Satan. Our parents have stressed it's not a sin on our part if Satan randomly throws an impure thought into our heads, but it is a sin to dwell on the temptation. Don't send yourself on a guilt trip because you're being tempted. It's freeing to know that as long as we're not bringing these struggles on ourselves by actively pursuing things we shouldn't or having a curiosity for things we shouldn't, we're not in the wrong. It's what we do with the wrong thought from the devil that determines whether we are sinning. Dwelling on it is a sin, and it can lead us to give in to the wrong desires they create. Dad says you can't do anything without the birds that fly in the sky above your head, but you can do something about a bird building a nest on top of your head. In the Bible, Paul talks of taking every thought captive. Basically, this means being able to control what's going on in our mind. By censoring our thoughts through the filter of God's Word, we will be able to recant any wrong thoughts or temptations that try to sneak in, and throw out the lies the devil is sending our way. One of the things Jana and I, Jill, learned during our firefighter training is that is that the quicker you respond to a dangerous fire, the less likely it is to cause serious damage. The same thing happens when we quickly respond to a fire sparked by a sinful thought that pops into our heads. Dad gave us a great idea for a quick response when tempted. He suggested we immediately use that as a reminder to pray for someone else who needs God's help. We talked about this idea in having a prayer target in chapter 2. In this way, what Satan means for evil, we use for a reminder to do good. We like to think of it as a live hand grenade coming our direction, and before it explodes, we quickly pick it up and throw it right back at the devil. Satan has been recycling the same basic temptations for the past 6,000 years. But since he is the master deceiver, he tries to deceive us into thinking we're the only ones who struggle with the wrong thoughts or desires he sends our way. In reality, the temptation to lie, steal, cheat, bully, gossip, and think wrong thoughts has been around since the first couple. Adam and Eve gave in to temptation in the Garden of Eden. The problem of temptation and sin has continued to the present day, which means your parents probably face many of the same problems you're facing now, right down to the problem of feeling all alone and thinking your parents don't understand. They understand a lot more than you think they do. They understand this time in life can be very intense because they undoubtedly went through went through similar struggles when they were your age. They know the many physical and social changes you're experiencing, including the wrong thoughts and other temptations Satan will put into our head. Another bit of good news is that as Christians, we're assured that God will not allow into our lives more temptation than we can bear. 1 Corinthians 10 verse 13 says, "There hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that ye may be able to bear it." Honestly, I cannot stand the KJV version of the Bible. Like, it's just really, it's annoying for no reason. Sorry. Like, let's grow up. It's 2022. I just want to talk about this idea of if you have a temptation, all you've got to do is just pray for someone else to help get rid of the temptation. And just this idea of, like, if you had a gay thought, that you've got to pray the gay away pretty much. Even though sometimes it seems the temptation is just too strong for us, we can overcome it if we receive the grace God offers. Because with men, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. Matthew 19, verse 26. God will provide a way to escape temptations. And one way he does this by providing parents or other trusted adults who understand what we're going through and can provide insights, encouragement, and guidance. And I'm just thinking about, like, the whole Josh situation and how really there was nobody who could really give that kind of advice, insight, encouragement, and guidance in terms of, like, navigating, having experienced an attraction to small children and, like, what to do, that they only went to the adults that they trusted instead of taking the time to try and trust other people and experts who dealt with this. And we see the results now. Because sometimes, like, this idea of a trusted adult, sometimes you have to go to a stranger who you just have a gut feeling you can trust. But this is key when we're struggling in any area of life, because Satan's power to keep us making the same mistakes is based in the secrecy of our sin. This is me. Just making the same mistake with my love life. When secrets are brought into the light and we make ourselves accountable, it's easier to find victory. I don't know what secret would need to be brought into light. All things start in the mind and grow into actions. And there's almost nothing our human mind won't try to rationalize away. But God's law is written on our hearts, and we will have a conscience that convicts us when we do wrong. It's vital that we learn how to have victory over temptations, because continuing down the wrong path will only lead to trouble and heartache. You may feel that right now your parents don't understand you and your turbulent thoughts and feelings, but we urge you to give them a chance. Ask them for help, ask them for advice, be honest and open with them about what's on your mind and what you're walking through. I agree, though. I think that's good advice, to try and be open and honest with your parents and to ask them for advice. I think it can be scary, depending on who your parents are. I don't know. I think sometimes parents do give you advice from the perspective of, like, I'm an adult, versus giving you advice of, like, oh, been there, done that, and, like, being able to come down on your level to speak to you like you're, like, they've been your age. This book talks a lot about that your parents have been there before, they were once your age, but my thing is that I really do think that adults get older and really forget what it's like to be a child. Really forget what it's like to be a child and really forget what it's like to be a certain age, in my opinion. And that's not to say, though, that your parents don't want to give you really good advice. Obviously, they care about you, but I do think that adults forget what it's like to be a child. And that's part of the reason why adults are so cruel to children. They forget what it's like to walk through that, you know? Like why people are so resistant to this idea of soft parenting, because they don't remember what it's like to be a child, to reflect how would I have wanted to have been treated as a child and still have been able to respect my parent, you know? But if you have already gone through a devastating trial from a past relationship or other wrong decisions, we want you to know that our Creator is a God of forgiveness and grace. If you turn from your sins, ask Him to forgive you, and commit your life to following Him, He will make you a new person and give you His desires, His dreams, and His goals for your life. Then guard your heart carefully against future intrusions of lust, and instead fulfill your natural need for love and acceptance with the boundless love of God. Okay, I'm going to try it. Romans 13 verse 14 says, to make not provisions for the flesh to fulfill the lusts thereof. This means we're to avoid or stop reading romance novels, teen magazines, and watching TV shows and movies that will stir up these sensual drives. That's so crazy that it's like, so you guys have never read a 17 magazine? Also, don't put yourself in a situation where you're alone with a guy, because bad things can happen. They sure can. If you're in a relationship right now with someone who does not have a spiritual focus, talk to him about the importance of centering your relationship on God and waiting on the physical components until marriage. If he's not interested, ask God to help you let go. If you stick with someone who spiritually is like a dead horse, you will hinder God's work in his life and your own. Grandma Duggar has always said, many girls think they can alter a guy at the marriage altar. And then she adds, very rarely does that work. If a guy is not a spiritual leader before you marry him, marrying him will not change him. Guarding your heart. When we commit our life to God, we're saying, yes, God, I want you to guide me. We give God the position as boss and ruler of our lives, and we release the steering wheel to his control. But there may be times when we begin to fear that if certain things are left up to him, they won't turn out the way we want them to. For instance, we may wonder, what would happen if I truly gave God control over my love life? And we may start to worry that he'll call us to be single till we're 30! Exclamation point. Okay. But when we hold something back, we're really taking control of the steering wheel again and trying to find our own path. This will only do us harm. Shortly before Mom met Dad, she had a boyfriend who was a popular football player at her high school. When she became a Christian at the age of 15 and was so excited about the things of God, she tried to talk to this boyfriend about her newfound faith, but he didn't want to hear it. Mom struggled with the thought of breaking up with the guy until she went to see the school counselor, who was also a Christian. It wasn't like Mom had been resisting God altogether, but this one area, her boyfriend, was something she was hanging on to. She says that when she gave her life to God, she opened the door to her heart and said, God, I want you to come in and take control. But as God began to convict her of different things in her life, it was as if she thought about her boyfriend and said, I don't want to give that up. It was as though she built a little closet, put the boyfriend in there, and then said, God, Here's this area of my life that I'm willing to give up for you. Music, movies, and clothing styles. But it felt as if God bypassed those things and went straight to that little closet and began to knock, asking, "Are you willing to give me this?" The counselor asked Mom, Michelle, "Are you trusting Jesus to take you to heaven when you die?" Mom responded, "Yes." "Then don't you think you can trust God with your love life?" he asked. Mom said she had never thought of it that way. She realized that God was more concerned with her future than she could ever be, and that if she could trust him for salvation, she could surely trust him with the guy she would marry. So she prayed and said, "God, if this is your will, please make it easy for me to let go." And God did. That next week they broke up, and just a few weeks later, God brought Dad into Mom's life. Michelle, the serial dater from, you know what? The Bible tells us, "Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life." Proverbs 4, verse 23. Guarding our heart must be important if the Bible says our very life depends on it. So how do we guard our heart? We begin by taking every dream and desire to the Lord in prayer and believing and trusting that his plan for our lives is best. His plan, carried out in his timing and his way, will bring us into the marriage he intended for us, if life intends marriage for us. And I think this is an interesting way to interpret Proverbs, because Proverbs in many ways is a book of wisdom, advice, life guidance. And to take this verse and interpret it particularly and specifically as it relates to relationships and love is interesting to me, because the way I would read this, "Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life," is that you need to keep your heart and your spirit soft, nice, sweet, and open to learning and receiving new things, and just kind, because out of your heart is going to guide the life decisions that you make. For out of it are the issues of life. Like, that's how you're going to react to things as they happen in your life, as you realize them in time. And this idea that, I'm saying keep your heart open as a way of guarding your heart, because yes, that's the way you guard the best parts of your heart, is by not hardening it with these ideas of like these hammered down biblical principles and rules as life guides, but rather that you should be constantly centering your heart as being this powerful, wonderful compass about how you're going to react to the issues of the day, how you are going to manifest, how is that going to reflect your Christianity? I don't know. I think I just disagree with how this Bible verse is being used. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. That, you just should be constantly checking and working on your heart in terms of just like being a good moral compass. And there's just too many times where the IFB, IBLP particular brand of Christianity doesn't seem to be having a good moral compass. That guarding your heart seems to me being incredibly like hard. And that's all I'm saying about that. While we wait for God to bring the man he intends for us to marry into our lives, we strive to harness that desire for marriage and use and direct these energies towards impacting the world for him. The way we serve God is by ministering to and serving others. Again, this is all really kind of like Gothard service years crap, that the time before you get married is supposed to be dedicated to this ministry and spreading the gospel, etc., etc. Because once you move on from ministry, your family will become your ministry, and raising up good Christians is going to be that's how you serve. That's how you serve God. The Bible tells the stories of those who achieved great accomplishments for God during their youth. We can learn so much from them. For example, Daniel was taken captive as a young teen, but counseled 4 kings and was made ruler of one of the largest empires of his time, all because he honored and served God in his youth. God used a young woman named Esther to save the entire Jewish nation. At age 17, Joseph was sold by his brothers into slavery, and yet God later used him powerfully to save Israel and Egypt from famine. God is able to use you to do great things for Him too. Devote yourself to serving God, and even though you are young, He can use you to impact the world for Him. Involving our parents in our life partner decision. During these years as single adults, we want to be prepared. We want to prepare for the time when God brings the man He intends for us to marry into our lives. This includes studying the Bible to gain principles and standards that will be foundational in our future marriages. It is also important to seek counsel from the ones who love us most, our parents and siblings, and get their advice on any guy we think might be a potential mate. They will be able to examine the guy more objectively than we can because they want what is best for us and will be able to identify character deficiencies that we might overlook. As the wise saying goes, guys can see through guys like girls can see through girls. I mean, I guess. I won't disagree that definitely it's good to have your friends and your siblings and your parents kind of look at the person you're interested in, because they can objectively, from a third party perspective, being on the outside of the emotions of the relationship, give you advice on like, yeah, girl, that was some trash ass, and you need to let that go. Like, that was a red flag that you shouldn't ignore. That's not a red flag you should accept. Bye. But that's not always how life works. So, but I don't necessarily disagree. Sometimes, but definitely there are times when the emotions that the parent, sibling, friend has for you, really, I would say when it's a familial relationship, your friends kind of tend to have a good third party objective, if you have good friends, obviously, perspective on those sort of things. But your family's emotions can sometimes get caught up in these kind of things, because what if somebody is in fact your soulmate, but your parents just don't like them? Or like you have a really controlling mother who, one of those really toxic mother-son relationships. So it doesn't matter how good the woman is. She hates every girl that gets brought home. There are some people who are really genuinely like that. But I get it. Because part of that, I think there's just so many of the things that, we have to live in this. It's a book, obviously, so it's supposed to be trying to give you the best case scenario. This idea that, so much of this cult involves being obedient to your parents, being submissive to your parents, being under their umbrella of protection, and just assuming that every single parent has this healthy, wholesome, best intention for you. And so if it is a parent who is Christian and godly, of course they're going to want to see you get married, and they're not going to do that sort of thing where they hate every person that you bring home. They're going to be excited for every girl that you get excited for and also give you their honest opinion. But I also think that isn't always the case for everybody. Oftentimes when a girl becomes emotionally attracted and attached to a guy, she begins to look at him through rose-colored glasses. But then once she gets married, out comes the microscope. The problems were probably there from the beginning, but she couldn't see them because of her emotional attachment. If a guy catches our eye or shows some interest in one of us, and we think he might have some potential, we probably would ask Dad or one of our older brothers what they think of him and get their advice. If it becomes clear this interest is mutual and growing, the guy is directed to talk to our dad, who then is able to go over certain things with the guy and determine his character and goals in life. He may want to know things like, is he a believer in Jesus? Does he know and love God? Does he have a vision for his life of doing great things for God? Is he free of all harmful addictions such as pornography, alcohol, drugs, immorality, etc.? Is he given to anger, lust, bitterness, greed, or envy? Is he wise with his finances? Does he love children? The answer to this one is probably apparent as soon as he steps foot on Duggar property. Is he a man of character, showing initiative, creativity, diligence, enthusiasm, and wisdom? Are both sets of parents giving their full and unreserved permission and blessing for their children to pursue this relationship? Does he have similar convictions and standards to ours? How long has he had them? Some lifestyle choices are just opinions and flexible. Others are non-negotiable. I wonder how seriously they take being a Republican, like how much of that is a standard. Has he been married or in a relationship before? If he has made a marriage vow to another woman, he needs to keep that vow. Do you see what I mean? Why Anna is trapped in her marriage? Imagine growing up thinking like this. That no matter what, under any circumstance, are you to break the vow of your marriage. The consequence of it. And if you do break the vow of your marriage, if you do leave that marriage, you're not allowed really to get married again as a woman. Because why would you leave your marriage? That's such a sin. And you getting into this other marriage is like you're committing adultery, because technically you are still bound before God to the covenant that you made, and just how toxic that is. Is his passion in life for earthly money or for eternal riches and rewards? I think this is such an interesting thing to ask, because Jim Bob is very money hungry. And to pretend that he isn't is just such a lie. Does he accept me just the way I am? Could I say he loves God more than he loves me? Will he draw me closer to God? Does he love me? If mom and dad agree that the young man has a heart for the Lord and a potential as a future spouse, then we will invite him to visit our family so we can get to know each other in our normal life group setting, and we'll also hope to visit him and his family setting as well. Understanding how courtship differs from dating. There are some very real and very purposeful differences between courtship and dating, and we believe that principles of courtship result in wise and safe choices. 1. Real-life settings. Getting to know the special young man we're interested in within a family setting is one of the biggest differences in dating and courtship. A danger of modern dating is that it is typically two young people alone enjoying an activity. Usually a guy invites a girl out to a nice restaurant or some fun place or event. They enjoy a carefree time without the responsibility of the normal tasks and pressures of life. For instance, if a guy invites you to have dinner at a restaurant, someone else makes your food exactly to your liking and then clears your dishes for you while the guy looks deep into your eyes and says whatever nice things he thinks you want to hear. Now, all of us would surely enjoy a few romantic dinners later on, but first we want to get acquainted with our young man in a normal family setting where we'll be watching to see how he treats our brothers and sisters. We want to see how he reacts to normal family events, such as Josie accidentally spilling her milk in his lap, Jackson unintentionally ruining his board game, or Joseph trouncing him in a basketball match. We need to know how he handles frequent interruptions. I kind of wish I had read this before I did my courtship video. Just some good excerpts. Such as Jennifer and Johanna racing through the room on scooters, intruding on his conversation. We want to see how he interacts with the other kids if we have to excuse ourselves momentarily to help mom or dad with something. It's pretty easy for a young man to put on a show of good conduct during a romantic one-on-one date. We want to know if he's willing to work hard and build a solid relationship amid real-life scenarios. And here's another biggie. How a man treats his parents and siblings, as well as our own, shows us how he is likely to treat his own future family. You simply won't see that by spending time alone with him. I guess. I mean, yeah. For sure. This is an interesting way to point it out. Like, this really isn't any different than dating, except that typically when you date, you want to get to know that person on a one-on-one level to then see, oh, is this somebody that I think I can bring around my family? Versus kind of just immediately saying, like, I'm going to bring this person around my family. And when you're thinking about it from this purity context, guarding your heart, praying about it, is this the one that God intends for me? Meaning that there's going to be this intense level of like, it's very rare that this will even come up. I guess it makes sense, obviously, just to start with your family, because it makes sense. But I don't know, I think it's weird to act like people don't bring their significant other around their family to see how they act and how they like them. I get it, I guess. You know, maybe I got to take these tips because this will help me to be more selective in my dating. Mind you, I live in a state. I live out of state from my family, so my first day is gonna have to be like a FaceTime with the whole family. Like, I just want to see how if you like them. Like, actually, if you want to talk to me, oh my God, I'm gonna start using that as a. I'm gonna start using that. I'm gonna start using that. Like, if you want to get to know me, if you want to talk to me, and it's a guy that I really don't want to get to know, and I really don't want to talk to me, I want you to talk to my mom first, and I want you to call her first and have a conversation with her. And if you enjoy that conversation and she says that she likes you, it is at that point that I will be more open to us talking and starting a conversation, a relationship. Oh my God, I'm gonna start using that. That actually is really, that's kind of good advice. That's a good curve. I love that. And it might be that the person, your mom likes them and it works out. Honestly, my mother wants me to get married and be in a relationship, so I kind of feel like she would like every guy that I introduce her to. But anywho, I really want to try that. I'm gonna try that. See how it goes. We saw a good example of how family interaction can reveal someone's character a few years ago when we went traveling out east and some friends invited us to their house for a big gathering. That afternoon, a young man and his younger sister joined a few of us in a game of volleyball. As we were playing, the guy's sister went for the ball, but she slapped it in the sand court, and instead of hitting it over the net, she caused it to bounce out of bounds. The young man said some demeaning things to his little sister, and a while later he actually threw a ball at her, just being mean and frustrated. All of us Duggar girls took note of how he treated his sister, and to be honest, we were shocked. Dad saw what happened, and he cautioned the young man, if you treat your sister that way today, you may well treat your wife that way someday in the future. The guy simply laughed off Dad's warning by joking, well, my wife will just have to learn to get out of my way. The guy evidently didn't learn anything from what happened that day, but we sure did. 2. Accountability. Another difference between dating and courtship is accountability. When we're alone with a guy in a dating situation with no one else to hold you accountable, it's easy to put yourself in physical and moral danger and give in to those emotions or sensual thoughts that promise pleasant but only temporary fulfillment. Please don't put yourself in this situation. Here are some cautions to think about before putting yourself in a situation where you are alone with a guy. First, if a guy cannot control himself with you before he is married, how are you going to trust him around other women after you marry him? Girl, what? 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 I can't. What do y'all have to say about that? Because, girl, what? How are you going to trust him around a woman in any other situation if he can't? Like, first of all, if a man wants to try it, he's going to try it. Period. Point blank. It has nothing to do with self-control. Like, this is to suggest that that there are no marriages where the person got together and had like a sexually intimate relationship or any kind of like physical intimacy like before y'all got married, and then that marriage, that man in this marriage does this all the time and is constantly tempted by women. Girl, what? That's kind of a crazy thing to say. If he can't control himself around you, how do you expect him to not cheat? I just don't even understand that. Did Joshua Duggar not cheat? And he showed perfect restraint to never do anything before him and Anna got married. If he can't control himself around you, and at the time that this book was written, that hadn't come out yet, that he was cheating. But I just want to know why they would be told this. What sense does that make? Like, if a man wants to cheat, he's going to cheat. I don't say has nothing to do with, I just can't understand that. Second, once you open the door to being alone and entering into a physical relationship before marriage, kissing, touching, physical intimacy, you are allowing your partner to unwrap a precious special gift that God intended you to hold on until your wedding day, and you're also creating a lot of guilt and distrust, and you won't be able to fully enjoy the pleasure of the sin because of all the guilt it brings. I don't know, not everybody feels guilty about sinning, love. Not everybody sees it this way. Third, an analogy that God uses is that as young children, he told us not to go near or play in the street, not because he wanted to take away our fun, but because he didn't want us to get hit by one of the many semi-trucks that drove past our house. In the same way, God has created physical intimacy to be a wonderful wedding gift for pleasure and bonding and to procreate children, but if it is done prematurely or with multiple partners, the very thing that was created to bring joy can bring sexually transmitted diseases such as HIV, herpes, and human papillomavirus, HPV, which can cause infertility, cervical cancer, and a life sentence of pain and suffering. HPV is just one of the many sexually transmitted viruses, but it has recently become a notorious killer of women. According to the National Cancer Institute, virtually all cervical cancers are caused by HPV infections. The American Cancer Society estimates that 4,030 women will die from cervical cancer this year. STDs like HPV also carry a high risk of being passed on to loved ones, including the woman's husband or her children. What could be worse than having to tell your potential future husband that not only did you not wait, but that you also have a severely painful STD that he will likely get if he marries you? And just again, so we just had a section of this book talking about how God forgives, and if you walk away from the sin, it's okay, that's it. And I understand that they're trying to encourage people to be pure and to wait for marriage and to only have sex with one person. But saying this about an STD is just so toxic because, one, people get STDs that are treatable, okay? And that also, I don't know, having this strong stigma around it when if you got herpes and the other person got herpes, y'all might be a good match. Neither of you waited, okay? Or that it could be the case that is who God had intended for you. That's who you wanted to be with. Somebody cue that toxic as hell book about the girl who was basically sex trafficked and was trying to get rescued by, what was his name? I'm going to put it in here. If you haven't watched my good sis Ellie's video about this series, please go and watch it. But in this context of this novel, which is based off of the Bible, like a story in the Bible, I don't understand. I don't know. Physical intimacy in marriage is pure, wholesome, and beautiful. Outside of marriage, it spreads disease, death, and destruction. It doesn't, though. It really doesn't. Does every person who has premarital sex spread disease? No. Now, is chlamydia super common? And if you're having unprotected sex with multiple people, probably that you will eventually get it? Probably, right? But it's treatable. So you get it and it goes away. Similar to like how your kids get ear infections, babe. Sore throats, colds, coughs. It happens. It's the territory. Like your husband could give you a yeast infection and you've never had sex with anybody else, but he's given you a yeast infection. Like it happens. Anywho. Just as Dad gave us kids boundaries to protect us from playing in the street, God gives boundaries as well. He wants to protect us from these hazards, and He will give us an abundant marriage if we do things in the order and timing He prescribes. Fourth, a baby is a blessing no matter how it is conceived, but it is a lot more difficult to raise a child as a single mom. A huge percentage of the guys who have gotten a girl pregnant do not take responsibility for the child or want to have anything to do with the girl once she is pregnant. And this is an interesting thing to say because there's just been a lot of talk recently about this idea that even when you're in a marriage, even if you're in a partnership, it's still kind of like for some women, they still experience almost this being a single mom still because of how much of the child rearing responsibility falls on them. It's nice to have that other person who can hold the baby for you when they come home, who is making the money if you guys have that kind of relationship. But for women who do have to work and then also take on the most responsibility in raising their children, I'm sure it's better than having no one, but to just diminish how difficult, I don't know, just how much of being a father is kind of very hands-off. Being a father just seems so much more about the emotional support and love for the children, taking care of the children's like monetary needs, but not necessarily, I don't know, like little things like knowing your kid's doctor or being the parent that gets called when your kid is sick at school, when you're looking for a job, thinking about your kids' activities and how they're going to get, back and forth between those activities. Those are things that normally fall on a woman's shoulders. You know what I mean? Like I said in that, like I said in my Anna and Josh part 1 video, Michelle Duggar's testimony where she's up at like 1 in the morning, up to like 2, 3 in the morning, doing laundry for 7 small children, and just like how intensely difficult that is for one person to do. And this is somebody who's married. So I don't know. I just kind of, I'm not going to say being a single mother is easy. Like that, my point is that even still in a partnership, you can kind of feel the burden of having so much of motherhood placed on you individually, of parenthood placed on you as the mother, that sometimes for some mothers it does feel still like kind of like you're a single mom. That's all I'm going to say about that. But I'm definitely not trying to on being in partnerships. I'm not trying to say that being a single mother is equivalent or I'm not going to say it's equivalent. That's all. If a guy is pressuring you, and then also that just that like even just the context of how this is being told, I get that they're speaking to girls, but again, there needs to be more of a responsibility and a pressure on men to step up and be fathers. If a guy is pressuring you to have a physical relationship with him and telling you, if you loved me, you would do this, tell him if he truly loves you, he will wait until your wedding day and not steal your purity. If you have already crossed that line, ask God to forgive you and then recommit yourself to staying pure from this point on until you get married. Okay, I promise. Several women in the Bible made major moral mistakes in their past, but they repented. That means changed their ways, and God used them in a mighty way in the future. Many times Jesus said, "Those who have been forgiven much love God, and others in a deeper way because they are so thankful for all the forgiveness they have received." It seems like such an awkward sentence. Many times Jesus said, "Those who have been forgiven much love God and others in a deeper way because they are so thankful for all the forgiveness they have received." If you are already pregnant, scared, and don't know what to do, don't allow anyone to talk you into taking the life of your child. Your baby is not a blob of tissue. Have you ever seen an ultrasound? About the time you realize you missed your cycle and wonder if you're pregnant, your baby's heart has already started beating. Its eye and hair color are already determined, and its brain has already formed. It's a baby from the time it is conceived. Even though this is happening out of God's design order, He loves you both and will forgive you. Look online for a Christian crisis pregnancy center in your area, and the staff and volunteers there will assist you in this new phase of life. Don't ever consider getting an abortion with a surgical procedure or with the abortion pill. Do whatever the you want. Abortion might seem like a quick fix to a big problem, but we personally know several women who have done this, and they have said they regret ending the life of their baby. It haunts them every day. Well, of course, if they're hanging around bitches like you who say things about their baby and the life and conception, that of course they're going to feel guilty and feel some type of way. Like, and even if they aren't, yes, they because we already this exists. This mentality exists that it's a baby already. Like, this is how the majority of people feel. And even if you don't think at the time of your abortion that you don't consider it a child, your mind lives with the what if. What would my life be like? What would that child have looked like should it have become a child? Anywho. You cannot get unpregnant. If you are pregnant, take responsibility and take care of yourself and your baby, and God will take care of you. You absolutely can get unpregnant, babe. I think what's interesting about this, you cannot get unpregnant. You could have a miscarriage and get unpregnant. You could have a stillborn and get unpregnant. Your baby could die in the womb. Like, it's just, those are the facts of life. And yeah. Pre-courtship. Another difference between dating and courtship is that dating may or may not have marriage as its goal. Often it is just fun, and for many, I don't think it's often for just fun. Like I cannot stand that they say this so much. This idea that that definitely, yes, there are of course seasons that people go through in their life when they just kind of want to date, and not necessarily are they looking for anything serious. But to say that that is the overwhelming majority, that that's the majority of the time, first of all, give us the statistics, show us the facts, prove that to us, because I'm so tired of hearing it. Majority of people date to form partnerships that are going to last a long time and to eventually get married. Most people do date to marry. Like this idea that you think people are pursuing love just to pursue the feeling is real weird. It's real weird. Just everything about the human experience kind of suggests that people go into relationships wanting a certain amount of love, intimacy, and affection. And to deny that by saying, and I think what's so interesting about that, why they would come to this conclusion that dating is just for fun, when so much, like dating is new, right? And so much of love, of marriage, has been just formed around this idea of we want our families to get together. This is what we want to happen. We want, we're going to arrange this. We want you to have this kind of commitment. Love hasn't been the center of partnerships and marriage, really. Like, it's been ideal. That's something that you hope to get out of your relationship. But to say that for a long, the idea of pursuing romantic love to form lifelong relationships and partnerships, again, is kind of new. So is dating. So suggesting that most people who date, like the mentality that has formed it is that I want to do these things, enjoy this person to form this long lasting relationship that is built on love rather than obligations and commitments that I've made to my family. So I'm tired of hearing this from them. Often it's just for fun. And for many young people, dating and physical intimacy go hand in hand. Modern day dating tends to revolve around a self-centered relationship that is all about me, what makes me feel good, and who makes me happy, satisfied, and complete, if only for a few moments. You may feel good or wanted for a little while, but pursuing these kinds of careless relationships will leave you feeling emotionally and spiritually empty in the end. You know what? I do feel spiritually and emotionally empty. Do I? I'm probably lying. In contrast, we believe the better alternative to casual dating is pre-courtship, no commitment time period. In pre-courtship, if a guy and gal think they have some interest in each other, they can get to know each other in a group setting through activities before courtship is ever considered. 4. Official courtship. Once they get to know each other and the guy and girl and both sets of parents are agreed that this appears to be God's will, the couple can move into an official courtship, which is a commitment period and a time for the guy to begin winning the girl's heart with the potential and goal of a short engagement to plan a wedding, then marriage. I've said it before that, like, it's a thing that your engagements are short because, and they've just said the reasoning that, pretty much your engagement should be short. So because you've already done all of this work to lead up to the wedding and marriage anyways, like, this is going to marriage. So why would you have a long engagement? It's not as though you're in a phase of getting to know each other more. It's not as though you're going to back out of your engagement. That if you're at the point of proposing, you should know that you are getting ready to make a forever covenant with this person for that to even be a question of having a long engagement. And I still kind of think that's stupid. It can take a long time to plan a wedding, and you can still have this time to enjoy each other in an engagement. Like, I don't get what's wrong with that. Courtship is a serious commitment and should only be carried out for those for whom marriage is a realistic possibility. Much care needs to go into making sure that this is the man you desire to spend the rest of your life with. 5. A time of observation. We're often asked, so when are one of the Duggar girls going to get married? So far, none of us has felt that it is God's will or God's timing to get married. We know that when Mr. Right comes along, we will have a peace in our heart, and God will confirm it with our parents. Until then, we're content in this phase of life, and we're striving to live every single day for the Lord. Dad has cautioned us girls not to give a hesitant yes to the first guy who comes along, out of fear we may never get another guy. At the same time, we know we shouldn't turn a guy away just because we have our sights set on someone else. God has encouraged, I mean, Dad has encouraged us to not only evaluate a man's character, but also compare his personality type with ours and consider other things to see if we could truly be compatible. So in the meantime, we girls see this time not as a time to eagerly search for that perfect soulmate, but as a time to observe the characteristics in the young men we interact with. It's natural for every girl and boy, somewhere around the age of 12, to begin noticing each other as more than just childhood playmates, and start thinking more along the lines of searching for their future soulmate. If a girl isn't careful, she can gain an emotional attachment to a guy prematurely during this phase, and before either of them is ready for marriage, she will already be dreaming of his last name with her first, and what a cute couple they would make, and engagement rings and wedding colors and on and on and on. Girl, this is me. That's me every time I meet somebody. That's my problem. So instead of getting wrapped up in this search, we want to share some of the things we've been taught to observe. You can learn so much about a guy through simply observing his interactions with others, whether he respects his parents, how he treats his sibling, who his close friends are, and by observing his personal conduct, how he chooses to spend his time, what things he esteems, what things he laughs at, how he takes his losses, if he is setting worthwhile goals or just aimlessly wandering through life. Sometimes I think I'm aimlessly wandering through life. We can also learn a lot about a guy through a wholesome communication and group interaction. Not on the flirtatious junior high level that shouts, "I like you," but through meaningful conversations about history, politics, theology, and such. When we approach our friendships with guys on a less personal, more business-like level, we're able to spot things we would totally miss if we had already drowned out our reasoning in a sea of emotional attachment. And that's where I'm going to stop. So I'll see you guys for part 2.
It's like you niggas gotta stop acting